it's Lena, and I don't know how to edit, so here are some pictures of me and Patty while we talk. Hi, it's me too. And we are here to discuss Jesus' resurrection. Any thoughts before we start, Patty? I'm still hungry. Me too, but back to the important matters. Yeah. Today we're going over Beat to help explain how Jesus' resurrection makes sense and the validity of it. And we will also be going over a couple different theories that try to explain the resurrection. And to be honest, they're a lot crazier than my human. Patty, I love you, but you have issues. Where do you think I get them from? But back to the matter at hand before you try to defend yourself. The first theory that tries to explain the resurrection is the conspiracy theory. You're mean, but yes, the conspiracy theory is a naturalistic theory, whatever that means, that explains the disciples stole the body of Jesus, which would make it look like Jesus had come back from the dead. This theory explains the fact that the tomb was empty, but it doesn't explain why the disciples went through all the things they endured after Jesus' death and resurrection. They had literally nothing to gain, and why would they die for a lie? And why would all 12 choose to be liars? That's a lot of people who decided it would be funsies to be martyrs just to make it look like a dead man had come back. On top of that, it doesn't explain the transformations of Paul and James. Paul, who was once Saul and a Pharisee, genuinely believed he was doing the right thing by persecuting and imprisoning Christians. James, the brother of Jesus, who went his entire life growing up with Jesus not believing that he is the Messiah, out of the blue, is suddenly preaching his message all over the place and was fully devoted to Jesus. But the reason so many skeptics reject this theory is because the disciples couldn't have preached Jesus' message so fervently and stolen the body knowing he didn't really resurrect. Another theory is the swoon theory, which says Jesus wasn't actually dead and he revived in the tomb. And the main objection is that the entire truth of Christianity relies on a Roman soldier who knew nothing about medicine to say he's dead. But how in the world could Jesus have survived all the torture, crucifixion, and entombment? By the way, the entombment process includes lots of heavy bandaging and other things, making it nearly impossible for someone so wounded to remove like 70 pounds worth of things. Indeed, Patty, indeed. Even the Journal of American Medicine agrees that he would have died, and they aren't a biblical source. Crucifixion leads to asphyxiation, which can shut down the entire body because the cells aren't getting enough oxygen. On top of that, he was pierced in the side to really make sure he was dead. I don't know about you, Patty, but not a lot of people could survive a stabbing after being beaten, tortured, and suffocated. Yeah, I don't think anybody could survive that. Plus, after all that, he'd have to roll out a big fat stone and sneak past Roman guards whose only job was to protect the tomb. And looking at the religious aspect of it, the appearances of Jesus being beaten and nearly dead wouldn't inspire so many people to worship him and change so many lives. Yeah, kind of like how I love steak, but if I saw a beaten and moldy steak on the ground, I wouldn't eat it, and you know I eat whatever's on the ground. Patty, did you just compare Jesus to steak? Yes, I did. Now, before you can start yapping about that, let's move on to the wrong tomb theory. Okay. The wrong tomb theory says that the women and the disciples went to the wrong tomb. Like, that's it. Yep, that's basically the entire explanation. But the tomb was known by everybody. It belonged to Joseph of Arimathea, not just a random tomb. And if it was the wrong tomb, where were the guards? They were supposed to be watching the tomb day and night to make sure no one took his body. So, was it time for dinner for them? And they left for a couple hours. And once the rumors picked up, all the Pharisees had to do is go and get Jesus' body to shut everything down. This also doesn't explain Jesus' appearance and the dramatic change of the disciples. If Jesus wasn't alive again, then the disciples wouldn't have changed because they would have no proof he was back. And how do you explain 500 people seeing Jesus alive again? Precisely, my servant, human. So, how could we explain the proof that Jesus was resurrected? Patty, we use beat, burial, empty tomb, appearances of Christ, transformation. Okay. So, starting with B, we find the account of Jesus' death in Matthew 27:57 through 66. We see again that the Journal of the American Medical Association confirms that Jesus had indeed died before he was brought down from the cross. The Roman soldiers were experts at death too. It was like their favorite pastime. Plus, Literally every Jew knew that he was buried in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. Also, the burial story is part of a very old source used by Mark, which is the oldest gospel dating from 42 AD to 47 AD. 1 Corinthians 15 also gives us a very early and independent source material. We also know Joseph was a real dude because he was a well-known member of the High Court. The burial story has no other competing stories and has no signs of legendary development or fabrication. Can I take the next one, Patty? Yeah, I've literally been carrying this whole video on my own. You have to do your part. Miss Douglas said so. Patty, never mind actually, but the next part is the empty tomb. Jesus' tomb was found empty, as per the name. This is also mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15. I sound so sick, I promise I'm not. This old information was transmitted by Paul and is part of the Gospel of Mark. Like with the burial story, this is very old, meaning there was no time for any legends to develop, and that takes at least 2 generations. Yeah, you do sound bad, and I'm so glad you finally pulled your weight, Lena. Look, you didn't call me your slave or servant this time. You're welcome. Next is the appearances of Christ, talking about how so many people saw Jesus once he was alive again. Yep, there were many occasions under different circumstances with different people and different groups of people that saw Jesus alive again. We know this is very factual because the narratives are extremely early. People saw Jesus only 3 days after his crucifixion, and it was written very early. The appearance narratives are also multiple and from independent sources. We know Jesus appeared to Peter because it was confirmed by Luke and Paul. Jesus also appeared to the 12 disciples, and it is attested by Luke, Paul, and John. The appearance to the women is confirmed by Matthew and John, and the appearance in Galilee are attested by Mark, Matthew, and John. And finally, the transformation of the disciples. Go ahead and finish with beat, Patty. Of course, I have to do all the work. Despite people saying Jesus didn't come back from the dead, the disciples suddenly believed he came back very passionately. They changed despite the fact that their leader was dead, a crucified Christ was accursed by God, and rising from the dead seemed crazy. So, why would they change so much if they were facing all those challenges, and why were they willing to die for their beliefs? Because they had seen Christ alive again. It's hard to believe 11, then eventually many others would do a complete 180 and be willing to die for someone they saw crucified if they didn't have a good reason. So, what really is the best explanation for Jesus' resurrection? That God did raise Jesus from the dead. This is the best explanation that covers all 4 established facts about Jesus' death and has no contradictions. And hearing this evidence, some people may choose to ask further questions and actually want to learn more, while others may still have a hard time believing because sometimes it's hard to believe someone could come back after such a brutal death. I think the best thing you can do when someone is still attacking Jesus' resurrection with all these different theories is to treat them as Jesus would and pray for them. Sometimes that is the best thing you can do because you are demonstrating the way a resurrected Jesus is working through you and how he is working through others. I agree, and now I'm going to go take my 100th nap of the day. Good night, everyone!